following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Every series has a crunch time, a point in which we truly know who has a chance to step up to the plate and maybe even take championship glory. Tonight is round number 5 of 12, and with 4 drop rounds in place for an official series calendar, if you haven't made your debut in the series by tonight, your hopes of an outright title victory are gone. Zip, nada, zero. Round 5 will be an exciting one though, as we head back to the Donington Grand Prix circuit. The last time this circuit was used in the calendar, Dane Warren would provide one of the most fascinating wins we have ever witnessed. Comfortably leading from the start, he got out to a great lead and was set for an easy victory until fuel dramas at the stop not only destroyed his lead, but sent him down to 5th in the pecking order. That wouldn't deter him though, as he fought his way back through the field as the laps ticked down. We know the circuit can provide drama, but who tonight will make this their theatre? Hello everyone and welcome to V8 Online's coverage of the Monday night V8 Supercars top split race live on the iRacing Esports Network as we continue to build the hype on a very exciting future for the broadcasting group. And by next week's coverage, things could look very different because Zach, things in life change pretty quickly, and the same can be said for our championship fight at the moment, which is currently led by Sam Blacklock, but by no means can he afford to kick back and relax now.
No, absolutely not. He's got Brett Loxton very tight on his heels there, just 81 points behind, and that's his closest championship rival at the moment. But as we've seen with drop rounds playing out throughout these iRacing V8 Supercars official championships, that's really going to be something we're going to have to look at later in the season, though. One thing that is really interesting to note is 4th through 10th are separated by only 120 points. So there's a very, very eager fight amongst quite a few drivers who are in the kind of mid-pack to upper mid-pack of this field, and they're making an impact on the championship standings as it is right now. So Sam Blacklock still in a very good position, but absolutely, as you said, Bo, doesn't have the time to wait around. He really needs to keep his championship movement going very forward.
He definitely does, and there's a lot of tough competition trying to take any kind of points away from him at the moment, because Ethan Gregolt is currently leading this qualifying session, and a fantastic lap there by Ethan to just narrowly beat Sam Blacklock. And what has to be said is a fantastic grid, and it features the likes of some very prominent drivers, including Justin Rouget, Ian Ford. You've got the likes of Shane Van Gisbergen in here as well. So the field tonight is going to be very much stacked, and it should provide some great racing. But it is good to see Evolution Racing Team back fighting for these race wins, fighting in the official series, which it has been a little while since we've seen that, Zach. But already they've got 4 cars in the top 5.
Yeah, and that just goes to show the power of Evolution Racing Team when they want to rock up and have a bit of a go. Ethan Gregolt already on preliminary pole position as it stands, and he's got Ian Ford and Cooper Webster, his teammates, sitting in 3rd and 4th at the moment. We are on board now with Shane Van Gisbergen, who is obviously a real-life V8 Supercar driver, and it really goes to show just how accurate these V8 Supercars are in iRacing, because I think a few of us in the iRacing community know Shane, and he doesn't like driving anything that doesn't feel good. So good to see Shane back in a V8 supercar, and obviously probably contractually has to run with a VF Holden tonight, which is good to see. But also Justin Rogier being out here tonight, very good to see some real life drivers making their way into the sim world.
Yeah, it's always great to see, and just, you know, to get a bit of a comparison of just how good the drivers that do race this car on the sim on a week-to-week basis, how they compare against a real-world driver. And from Shane van Gisbergen, hasn't been the first lap for him, but he's making a pretty good attempt on this second one, with only one corner standing in his way between perhaps moving his way back up on the grid. As we zoom in there, as he makes his way onto the final corner, getting a bit of oversteer on the exit, as he now makes his way to the start-finish line, a 1:30.5 to beat, and he's going to obliterate that and go to a 29.2, but such is the competition of this field, it's only going to get him up to 18th place, so not the best there for him, but he won't be last, because Adam Hyland in the Meme Machine, unfortunately, does not set a lap time, but that does look like it is going to be pretty much the end of all the drivers on a lap at the moment, so everyone getting their laps in nice and early. And we'll go through your qualifying results right about now as qualifying comes to a close. And it will be Ethan Griggold who takes pole position only narrowly ahead of Trans-Tasman Racing Sam Blacklock. Ian Ford will line up on the second row for an all second row ERT field. Brett Cananzi lines up in the top 5 with Brett Loxton making it a double Brett on the third row of the grid. Chris Coxhead and Carl Stokes make up row number 4 with Ross Rizzo and Andrew Welter, your top 10.
Yeah, we've got Jamie McKnight, another ERT car sitting there just outside the top 10 in P number 11. Corey Preston had some fantastic pace last week, but unable to make it to the end of the race. We'll see if he can move himself up through tonight's race. Harley Haber showing good form, starting from 13th. He'll move himself up. Justin Rogier starts from 14th position. Dylan Golson starts from 15th. He's alongside ERT's Riley Blythe in 16th position. Thomas Hins will line up against Shane van Gisbergen on row 9 of the grid. And we have Greg Sharp and Andrew Zackerson rounding out the top 20, with Matt Morris, David Miller, and Adam Hyland in the Meme Machine bringing up the rear of the grid, and will be looking forward to seeing him move his way through the field as well.
Yeah, it should be a pretty good watch, but this does have a lot of championship implications in this race at the moment, because we do have a strength of field just almost reaching the 4K bracket, which means we do have a lot of talent in this field at the moment, and it's not going to be an easy race victory for any one of these drivers in the top 10. And we do know that so many times in these races, you do have mixed results. You do get drivers you might not expect to be at the very front of the field taking the odd victory or two. But 28 laps, you've got a 50% fuel restriction, so you're not going to be able to run the tank all the way to the ends of the race. So one pit stop will be needed as you turn yourself hard left out of the final corner and make your way into the pit lane. But the clock strikes 0, and the revs definitely do not reach 0, because they're going all the way up to the rev limiter as we get ready to start 28 laps here at Donington, and away we go, and a fantastic start from the front of the grid for Sam Blacklock, who makes a bit of ground, but look behind Cooper Webster with a great start as well as we go side by side into turn number 1, which is always interesting to see as they funnel into the right-hander side by side once again for your race lead. It's getting very close as they go side by side down the hill. This is very, very tough on cold tires in the V8 Supercar. Hard to make it work, but they're going to try at the moment. Side by side, almost contact as they dart their way down. Now into the fast left-hander. Now Cooper Webster as we got contact in the back, which features a handful of drivers as well. So a bit of a check-up there, which is always unfortunate. And looks like Brett Cananzi was one of the cars involved in that. Also, we have the likes of Cooper Webster now plummeting through the field. He's got to slow down, so his ultra-aggressive start is not paying off. And a big moment on the exit once again. It's all going backwards for Cooper Webster, Zach.
Yeah, unfortunate slowdown for him there. I think it was Cananzi and possibly Rizzo who got together before. They've both managed to keep on moving. Andrew Welter managing to find a position out of all that. But mostly clean start from everyone. Very unfortunate though for Cooper Webster. He had a great start in third. Was looking to attack PTR Sam Blacklock, now sitting down in pretty much I think P7. So very poor start for Cooper Webster there.
Yeah, absolutely. But we will move our way up to the 9th position at the moment, which is Cooper Webster. So he's having a very tough race, as you can see there on screen at the moment, looking around the outside of the 16 car into this final corner, which is, of course, Brett Cananzi, who was also involved in a bit of a lap 1 scuffle, but are not able to make anything happen now as they make their way now onto lap number 2 here at the Donington circuit. And, well, we do have a pretty good track temperature of only 24 degrees, so there's a lot of grip at the moment, but the drivers will struggle just a little bit as we keep our eyes on Justin Rougier, who makes his way back into the racing seat of a Monday night strength of field race after what has to be said is quite a long time, Zach.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you and I had the pleasure of watching Justin race the Aussie racing cars at Sydney Motorsports Park a few weeks ago, where he was very successful. Unfortunately, had some problems in the final race, which we're all pretty heartbroken about, but very good to see him back in the sim, because he's a very talented racer, and there's someone who's going to put on a good show. It's someone of the likes of Justin Rougier. He likes battling, he likes having fun in a car, and I think that's one of the most important things for any racer, is to have a lot of fun with it. So he's now in a bit of a sandwich between Jamie McKnight and Dylan Goulson. Dylan's just backed off that little group a little bit. Justin's starting to make his way up on Jamie McKnight now, so we'll get some footage of that for you shortly. But at the moment, Harley Haber and Corey Preston going at it into the hairpin, and Corey Preston might even pick up 2 here if he can go round the outside of Chris Coxhead into the final corner. But Chris just gives him a little bit of a nudge, and that's actually enough to send Corey around. So the bad luck continues for Corey Preston in a change of colours, it seems, for this race as well. No longer with Cross Continental Motorsports, so maybe that could have affected his qualifying pace, not having the setup of a team working together there. But as it stands, Corey Preston is now way down the field. He's now just rejoined the track ahead of Andrew Zackerson, who is currently plumb last at the moment.
Yeah, so not at all good for Corey Preston, who, like you said, recently left the team environment, going back to doing his own thing for JSMR Sim Racing. So interesting to see how that pans out for him, but at the moment it's all panning out pretty nicely for Ethan Gregault, who continues to lead this race with an advantage now of over 0.8 of a second, as we see Thomas Hinz now pulling off to the side of the circuit and calling it a night. So for Thomas Hinz, unfortunately just deciding that the car was a bit too damaged from the opening of the race, and will decide to finish this race out into the pit lane. So a shame to see, but for Ian Ford, he's always been a quick driver. You always know that he is, you know, always going to be fighting towards the front of the field, but he's not having an easy time against Brett Loxton, who is in championship contention, and he's going to be in contention if Sam Blackhawk continues to make a mess.
There's been a huge accident in the back of the field. Sorry, Bo, that's involved about 4 or 5 cars there, and I think maybe Shane Van Gisbergen involved, and there's more going on, because Justin Rougier has just been cleaned up by Riley Blythe, pardon me, as he got a tap from somewhere else. So we'll have to get you a replay of all of that, ladies and gentlemen, because there were 2 very big separate incidents there, and yeah, that was very unfortunate. So we've got the replay on screen for you now. Yeah, take us away, Bo.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was a big hit there for Shane Van Gisbergen. We'll get another look now as he was just trying to get a little bit racy against the likes of Chris Coxhead, and you can see the ERT car there diving down to the inside, as well as all just bottlenecks, and bang, big hits to the Velocity Sim Racing car as well, and it all just kicked off from there. So you can see Shane Van Gisbergen tried to get on, and now look at Rougier here. He gets a big hit from the side, gets a big tank slap, goes sideways into the circuit, and unfortunately Riley Blythe had absolutely nowhere to go. So a big shame there, as we now go back up to Shane Van Gisbergen, who continues to find himself in a fight, this time with Adam Hyland in the Mean Machine, and unfortunately the Mean Machine cannot find his way past the current V8 Supercar official, real world championship leader.
Yeah, well, he's probably got a little bit of an advantage now. Looks like Shane's carrying a little bit of damage to that Red Bull sponsored VF Commodore as he comes through the chicane there, but Adam Hyland very much too eager on the loud pedal there, and got massively crossed up. And now Chris Coxhead is going to have a look down the inside, even missing the rear boot panel of that vehicle, still able to carry some, well, good enough speed to get past the Mean Machine as it stands. So a few cars looking up just ahead of them, but Chris Coxhead got that move done on the Mean Machine. And now Van Gisbergen's having a look at Dylan Goulson. He obviously was ahead of that car prior to getting into that little accident that he was involved in before, and now starting to attack the rear of Dylan's car. And I don't know about you, Bo, but there's one person I wouldn't want following me in a V8 Supercar official race. It'd be the likes of someone like Shane Van Gisbergen.
Absolutely. I've heard he's got a little bit of experience in these cars, so he might know a thing or two about how to set up a pass and find his way past a competitor. So for Shane Van Gisbergen, continuing just to punch out the lap times, despite a pretty broken car, it has to be said, but doing good at the moment. Ethan Grigalt now got his lead out to over 2.2 seconds because whilst all that chaos was happening at the hairpin, Sam Blacklock was having an absolute nightmare and I was very lucky to hold on to second place. So for Sam Blacklock, he's fallen into the clutches a bit more of Ian Ford, but he's been able to regain a bit of that margin once more as Chris Coxhead continues to scrap it out with the rest of the drivers, including Dylan Goulston, as they go side by side through the chicane. You don't want to be doing that, but they've just about managed. And Goulston now gets a fantastic run as Coxhead tries to throw the block. Can't quite do it. That was a bit dicey. That is not what you need to be doing, but they're fighting anyway, and a great move in the end from Coxhead, who's trying to defend this contact on the exit, and another hit for Goulston, who now loses a spot to the Mean Machine, and Matt Morris might want to get involved in this as well, but he might be too far back, but he goes late on the brakes, and you can see that Adam Hyland taking a very unique line as well, which could compromise his exit a little bit if he's not careful, but it looks like he might just get away with that one.
Yeah, nice and smooth on the gas pedal there for Adam Hyland, unlike what we saw coming out of the chicane before. So good to see he's calmed his nerves a little bit and is laying it off that loud pedal so quickly. But these guys are still fighting behind. Dylan Goulston and Matt Morris still looking for a way past. And Matt Morris in that Velocity Sim Racing machine now tries to have a bit of a look as they come down through the kink at the bottom of the hill there. And he might be able to make something work as he comes through this next section of corners. If he doesn't run a little wide off the track, he's trying to use as much of an angle as he can get to carry momentum through the corner. But unfortunately, just getting it a little bit crossed up on the exit there. This is another good point to critically get a good exit out of, to make sure that you can get a pass down into the chicane here, but it doesn't look like he's managed to get a good enough exit there. And he'll have to follow around for the next few corners. But Ethan Grigalt is doing a very good job at the moment. As you said before, Bo, 2.2 seconds out to that lead. And Ian Ford still applying lots of pressure to the back of Sam Blacklock there. And Kyle Stokes is doing surprisingly well up there in position number 5. Does have that Synergy Sim Racing set under his feet. But nonetheless, a very good performance from Kyle Stokes so far as well.
Yeah, and he's been a very impressive driver. We've seen him walk away with some split 2 wins in the V8 Scops campaign, and also some pretty good drives in the Endurance campaign as well. So Carl Stokes, a driver that definitely Synergy Sim Racing will want to be holding on to because he has a very good future. And if he continues his development, he very well could end up winning the races in this series, as we have seen the likes of Wayne Burke and Jordan Ross from that same stable managing to do as well. But we're now keeping our eyes on Cooper Webster, who's getting very racy once again against the likes of Brett Cananzi, who's just in front, Holland versus Ford, which is a fight we always love to see. But it has to be said, Cooper Webster, as we go on board, just about bumping the Ford just through that section there. So very impatient from Cooper Webster, who started in 4th, has fallen down to 8th place. So he's had a nightmare, and he's trying to make a bit of a recovery. As he looks to the left, there's not much space there, but he's just about got the margin as we fire into the channel. Look at Cananzi on the rear brakes. He's completely overcooked, and now he does a little bit of sandcastle work because he's also lost the spot to Harley Haber.
Yeah, unfortunate there, but when you're pushing as hard as you are, Brett Cananzi, it's very easy to lock those rear tires. So unfortunate Cananzi there. He's had a few mistakes in the last couple of races, which have caused him to fall out from some very good positions. So hopefully he can keep that car on track for the next 21 laps and walk away with a decent result. Top 10 in a 3,900 strength of field, still a very good result, and going to put him in a good chance for the championship if he can be nice and consistent. But Sam Blacklock, speaking of championships, is being very consistent at the moment. He's just falling away from Ethan Grigog a little bit, and Ian Ford and Brett Loxton still pretty much matching his times there, but they're just hanging on to the back of him ever so slightly. But for Sam's championship, this is looking really good. P2 as opposed to P1, not ideal, but still extremely good points and still ahead of all of his championship contenders in the championship at the moment.
Yeah, and that's the important thing. If you're going to lose a race to someone when you're fighting for a championship, do it and lose that spot, or lose that race win, sorry, to a driver that you're not fighting for the championship. So for Blacklock, you know, Ethan Grigot isn't necessarily a threat. Of course, if you made your start here tonight in this series, you can still get the maximum amount of rounds on the board to clear your drop round, so you can fight for a championship. But at the moment, Ethan Grigot, I think, might be doing this for a one-off race. As we see, it's getting very racy in the mid-pack, with David Miller finding himself in a battle with the likes of Corey Preston and also Andrew Welter as they fire their way now into the final chicane. But down the back straight, they were just about knocking the bells off each other's cars. And Andrew Zackerson not having an easy time on the exit of the chicane as well, which is a very tricky corner because it compresses quite a lot on the turn-in point. So where the car's constantly darting around, as you can see, just about none of them made the apex there. Corey Preston in particular, really struggling to pull the car up into that final hairpin, which is always good to see. We'd like to throw, you know, little challenges at these drivers, really make them work for this car. And at the moment, Corey Preston really struggling to do that, as Adam Highland now finds his way to the back of Chris Coxhead, but has to find a way past.
Yeah, and he's been kind of following Coxhead the last few laps, so be interested to see now that he's this close if he's able to put anything onto Chris. But we'll have to wait and see in the coming laps. It's a few battles still going on, mainly in the back of the pack though, and Andrew Zackerson was ahead of Corey Preston for quite a long time. I think he actually managed to get past him, but he's just lost his spot now to Andrew Welter as well, who had some good racing last week at Watkins Glen also. So he'll now try and follow Corey Preston, because Corey's got some decent pace, currently way down the order from where he started. And if Andrew can just kind of hold on to the back of him there, that's going to really help him move up the field. And I think we do have a pit stop tonight, so there is going to be a little bit of strategy, and maybe Andrew can pit early and start making up a few places and just get himself into the groove.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always a chance just to get a few passes done in the pit stop cycle as well. It's hard to do it on track, pretty easy to do it on the pit lane if you're smart about what you're doing. But currently following the progress of Shane Van Gisbergen, who has Jay McKnight just in front of him. And Van Gisbergen is always a driver that's in the top 10s in the real world. Unfortunately, no such luck at the moment in the sim world. Only P11 for him at the moment. So I'd be a little bit disappointed, but from 18th on the grid, there's not a huge amount you can do. So up 7 spots at the moment, but still plenty to go, as Ian Ford still managing to break away just a little bit from Brett Loxton. And also the pack behind of Carl Stokes and Ross Rizzo has settled down a bit. As I say that, Carl Stokes goes for a bit of a lockup and almost throws the Synergy Sim Racing car off into the weeds. But for the most part, the front has settled down. So you're certainly right, Zach, in that the back of the field is where all the entertainment is happening. And there have been some really good scraps. And it's always nice to, you know, just show off the drivers that perhaps aren't always, you know, in the action or the thick for the real points in the championship. But it's always good to see a bit of screen time, because these drivers are just as talented as anyone else in the field.
Yeah, it's very difficult to race these cars in close quarters, just given how difficult they are to drive. I mean, we've seen even just tonight how much people are struggling, as you mentioned, Bo, just even to pull up into that final hairpin. And we've seen it all over the track. There are several places where a lot of drivers are consistently not making the apexes or just taking it a little bit too deep. And Adam Highland now is really on the back of Chris Coxhead. But, you know, those being able to race these cars in such close quarters is a very difficult skill. And it's kudos to everyone who's able to pull it off and put on a good show for everyone and have a bit of fun. And I think that's why a lot of the guys come out, especially for these Monday night races, because you know that you can go out with quite a few guys and have a good race. And, you know, sometimes cars come together and things are said that shouldn't be said. But at the end of the day, it's racing, and we'll have fun doing it. So it's good to be able to give a bit of screen time to these boys down at the back, because they've got sponsors too. And the more we can keep our eyes on everybody, the more we have a bit of a screen, you know, the more we can improve the community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're not wrong about these cars being difficult to race. I consider myself a decent GT racer, but my V8 Scott's career lasted just 3 laps. These things are not easy to race and very easy to find yourself in trouble. But Andrew Zackerson is not looking in too much trouble. In fact, he's looking pretty damn good, because he has Andrew Welter just in front of him, and any chance of getting a position done in the next few laps could be an opportunity. But we are slowly closing in on the halfway point as Harley Haber drops all the way down the field now, because Harley Haber has lost it at the chicane, went around, spun it, and the LeBlanc RRT car for Redback Racing Team well, the only redback that's going to find her off into the grass on the side because he had an absolute nightmare there. As I will get a replay up on screen for you now, and you can see now Harley coming into the final section of track. But for Harley Haber, that was not what he would have wanted, and I believe that might even drop him almost outside of the top 10 now.
Yeah, it looks like it has. Looks like he's down in P number 11. So Shane Van Gisbergen, as we just see Harley spinning back off the track. So Shane Van Gisbergen's now worked himself into the top 10, which is where he will hopefully stay for the rest of this race. But he does carry a bit of damage on that. So Harley's been putting in a lot of good races this season, so he'll just have to knuckle down, keep the keep the heat out of those tires, and just try and put in a few more good laps until pit stop time and get some fresh boots on and go again.
Yep, absolutely. And well, pit stop time is definitely upon us very, very soon, as we are on lap number 12 at the moment. There is just 16 left to go, so we're almost at the halfway point. But Adam Hyland, he doesn't look like he would care too much about this going a little bit longer, because he's got very strong pace and 2 cars right in front of him, which is of course Harley Haber, who had that spin. But a little bit closer again is Chris Coxhead, who he hasn't quite been able to find a way past yet, but under the braking zone, he's definitely making up a lot of progress, probably a bit too much, because by going so quick on entry, he's sacrificed his exit, which just allows Chris Coxhead to extend that gap a little bit more, and no progress there made for Adam Hyland. So sometimes you can overdrive the car a bit, especially at Donington, where it's all about the flow of the circuit, getting on the power, getting on the brakes at the right times, wrong times. And for Adam Hyland, just getting a little bit too aggressive on entry, just trying to carry more speed. And in the end, in the long run, it's just hurting him down the straights.
Yeah, well, you've got to pick where you go for your moves, and you might have to set up for a move 3 or 4 corners in advance. You might have to start making something happen. So I think Adam, he obviously has the pace in that car. He's getting up to the back of Chris Coxhead quite consistently, but he just needs to figure out where that one weakness is, where he can shine through and finally get past. It's kind of hard to say at the moment. It seems like the last portion of the lap and the first portion of the lap are where Adam seems to drop off a bit, but as we come through the as we come through the mid-sector now, you can see already he's starting to really close back up onto Coxhead, and as we come down the straight as well, he's going to have that slipstream effect, which is going to help him onto the back, and you can see even through there, just a much tighter line and a little more momentum there through Adam Hyland, and he's now within 2 car lengths, and if he can nail this chicane, he might be able to do something as they come into the hairpin. So very late on the brakes for Adam Hyland, takes it nicely, but Chris Coxhead matching him through there. So unfortunately, he's not going to be able to do something unless it is very desperate. Does show the nose a little bit, very late on the brakes, and now we can see he's within half a car to a car from Chris Coxhead now. But we will now just have a look into the pit lane, because one of our race leaders has decided to make the trip in, and it's Sam Blacklock, and Kyle Stokes has also followed him in, as well as Jamie McKnight. And I'm sure we'll see a couple of others starting to come in too. So the pit stop phase has opened up. And as we've seen, Bo, the cold tyres and the fresh rubber can really play out quite dramatically in these pit stop phases.
Yeah, we saw pretty much last week at Watkins Glen, we see Corey Preston really getting punchy on the exit with one of the Velocity Sim Racing drivers of Matt Morris on the exit of turn number 1 to now plummet their way into this very sketchy downhill section. But Corey gets the move done early, so good job from Corey to make his way up yet another place. But you're absolutely right, Zach. We saw Watkins Glen pretty much decided on when you came into the pits, and how you utilized those brand new boots on the car, because they really do make such a difference. Won't probably be as aggressive here today. Of course, a slightly lower track temp, so the tires are holding on just a little bit better. But for Blacklock, he'll definitely make some time on Ethan Grigault, and I'd be interested to see if Ethan does indeed respond, because he probably has the margin, if he has the tire life, to go 1 lap longer again and really just protect himself in the final lap in the final stint of the race, and he's going to do exactly that.
Yeah, well, that's a very smart move there, and Ethan Grigault, he and most of the guys at ERT as well are actually very good and very thoughtful about saving their fuel and when they do come into the pits. So they're definitely ones to look out for on the strategy front. Brett Loxton, another one of our championship contenders, he's in the lane, as well as Ian Ford, who's someone I probably would have expected to stay out a lap longer, and Cooper Webster coming in for some fresh rubber as well. Now, these guys have more potential to jump positions, and Ethan Grigault, I think, is really the man with something to lose here. I'm sure we'll see him in this lap because I think that if he's out one more lap longer, Sam Blacklock is really going to be hounding him as he comes out of this pit lane. Luckily, it is a very short run into turn 1, so he might be able to do something in terms of a challenge if Sam has made up that deficit. As Ethan just coming through the chicane towards the end of the lap now, doing a very good job just wrestling with the car a little bit, and we'll have to see if he decides to come this time in. So very hard and late on the brakes, clips that apex nicely. He's very much in the zone. He's running the car out nice and wide, clipping all his apexes, doing a fantastic job here as Ethan Griggolt. He comes into the final corner now, and he is running it very much to the inside. So he is now in the pit lane, and this is where we'll see how Sam Blacklock's been able to do on those fresh tyres, if he's been able to do enough to get himself past and into the race lead.
Yep, absolutely. And Blacklock's just making his way through the chicane now, so using up a lot of those tyres, really pushing for what should be maybe the quickest lap of the race so far. Of course, with the slightly better fuel load and also the more rubbered in track and the new tyres, he should be able to punch in a pretty respectable lap time. Current quickest lap time goes to a 1:28.3 for Ian Ford. So the ERT cars have pace, but do they have track position? Sam Blacklock makes his way out of the final corner and will make the run to attack Ethan Griggolt, but there's only one problem, and that is Ethan Griggolt is already apexing turn number 1.
Yeah, very nice stop there. They're actually pretty much dead even on terms of the stops for both Ethan and Sam there. So very similar strategies in play. Obviously took on a very similar amount of fuel, but it looks like Ethan did enough and was able to keep up those lap times enough to keep that margin fairly strong. Sam Blacklock, to his credit though, a 1:28.5, his fastest lap of the race, and only a tenth or two off that of Ethan Griggolt. So very much pushing his Sam Blacklock, but just not quite enough in that outlap period to make anything work.
Oh, as Harley Haber's getting in quite the fight at the moment with the number 20 car of Chris Coxhead. Side by side through the S's. This is not a place you want to go side by side, and that is exactly what, as Chris Coxhead will meet his maker. Goes for a jump as well. I wasn't aware we're watching the Monday Night Dukes of Hazzard showdown, but unfortunately for Coxhead, he's been able to hold it onto the track, but he has lost that spot. But very much a dramatic moment there as our race leader Shane Van Gisbergen continues to run laps, but he finally comes into the pit. So Van Gisbergen just wanted to get a lap under his belt, but Chris Coxhead, well, he got frequent flyer miles under his belt. We'll see if we can get a replay of that up on screen for you. But that was a fantastic move there as Cooper Webster now gets very close to the back of the Synergy Sim Racing car just in front, who continues to fight. But looking at Chris Coxhead now, and here we go. Here is a replay of what transpired coming down the Donington Hill. And Harley Haber, well, he's always been an aggressive driver, and you can see going a long way around the outside and just goes for a huge move up the inside, locks to the inside front there, side by side. Coxhead, of course, with a slightly better line, gets a much better run, but then just bang, huge snap there. And look at this, all of a sudden doesn't hit the wall and jump. Absolute rallycross stuff, and that is fantastic to see, because he is continuing on the race and only lost one spot.
Yeah, he got a few feet up in the air there, and that was a very late move from Harley there. Credit to Chris for being able to see it coming and give them both racing room. It's a pretty good move. Unfortunate for Chris there that he wasn't able to keep it together and have a bit of a battle going on. But we'll now take you up to Brett Loxton, who's now coming onto the back of Ross Rizzo, and looks like Ross did have a better pit stop than Brett and was actually able to jump him in the pit stop phase there. Trick Sim Sports synonymous with making very good fuel calls, and now Brett Loxton goes to the inside, makes a nice move there on Ross Rizzo. He's going to have to fight it into the next corner though, because Rizzo has the preferred line into the final corner, and they go door to door. Very tight line there from Ross Rizzo. Brett Loxton tries to make it work around the outside. Ooh. Both of them getting a little bit squirrely, more so Brett Loxton though, and that's going to forfeit a little bit of top end speed for him as they come down to the end of the straight, but he's going to keep it in there. He's going to stay late on the brakes, and through number 1, it looks like Brett Loxton is going to come out on top, but they're going to go side by side again, and this is where it starts getting really dangerous. This is high speed, low downforce. Oh! They're using all the mechanical grip they dare use, and Brett Loxton has just used up a little bit too much on his rear brake, and Ross Rizzo using a little bit too much traction on the exit of that corner, so he's heating up his tires a little bit as well. So good, fair racing from both these guys, pushing it to the absolute limits to try and make it work here at Donington.
Absolutely, and some great racing there between Brett Loxton and Ross Rizzo. What it has done is just allowed Ian Ford behind just to close in a little bit and make a bit more ground on these two. And Ian Ford does have to make ground on Ross Rizzo, as his pit stop was just about 3 seconds slower, so a big swing for Ian Ford against Ross Rizzo in the pit stop. So like you said, Zach, that Trick Sim Sport guys always willing to throw a bit of a curveball when it comes to the pit lane, and managed to do it once again, as all of a sudden Brett Loxton, well, he's got to slow down, and he is losing spots to Ian Ford. So any chance of him attacking Ross Rizzo once again are out the window, unless something dramatic happens in the next few laps, which is always going to happen. But right now he has to watch his mirrors, because he finds himself in an ERT sandwich, which is not a place I would like to be, Zach.
No, it's definitely not pleasant having teammates either side of you, because they can start playing tricks with you, and pretty sure those guys will be in Discord or on TeamSpeak having a word to each other and see if there's anything that they can do. But I think Brett Loxton's got quite a bit of speed in that car, and at the moment the only thing that Ian Ford is really going to have to worry about is just keeping up that pace and making sure that he doesn't come under threat for that number 4 position once again. So it is on the shoulders now of Ian Ford to get a bit of a wriggle on, because I'm sure that Ross Rizzo doesn't really have the outright pace in that car to be up in 3rd position, but strategy's gotten him there. If those two guys fight behind him, he may be able to pull something off. We'll take you now to Adam Highland, who is in the meme machine, and as always, having a good time with it. He's starting to make himself up onto the back of Shane Van Gisbergen now. He's been plugging away some decent laps the last few rounds, although he is a little bit slower than Shane at the moment, so still work to do. But yeah, Brett Loxton really in a deep fight here with the 2 ERT guys, and now going for a little bit of a look.
Oh!
Ian Ford very late on the brakes, and Ian kind of running wide there to avoid some contact, and he got it done. So fair play there to Brett Loxton. He put the shoulder in, and he forced Ian Ford out of the way, and that's what you need to do.
Oh, but he's lost
a little
it!
bit wide. And now that's going to allow Ian Ford to come back on the traction, but Brett Loxton managed to just keep it all gathered up just as we have a slow car getting out of the way there. A little bit of contact, a little bit of a rub as they come down the straight between Ford and Loxton there. But all those guys keeping it together. So now Brett Loxton really has to get a move on. He's got to get himself back up to Ross Rizzo. Otherwise, these 2 ERT cars are going to be on him so fast, he won't have time to think about what's going on.
Yeah, this is not a good place to be for any of these drivers. They need to make sure they're catching Ross Rizzo if he has to fuel save. But at the moment, they're just absolutely destroying each other. And I'm very surprised Brett Loxton held on to that place and actually managed to hold on to the spot as well, because that car was just rotating so viciously on the rear brakes into the hairpin. And now look in the background, the 2 ERT cars looking at each other, and Cooper Webster says, Ian Ford, I might be newer in the team, but I'm just as quick as you, if not faster. I'm coming through, and we're going to go side by side on the exit between the teammates. And that was a bit of an unnecessary move for Cooper Webster, in my opinion. That is not a place you go for a move, especially if it's not coordinated. And they've just cost themselves a little bit of time, but we'll see what happens on the exit. There is no team orders at ERT. We've both driven for them, Zach. We know how things work out there. There are never team orders. You're always allowed to fight your teammate. But at the moment, it's just costing them, because look at the gap to Loxton now for Ian Ford, and now the gap to Kyle Stokes, who's right underneath the back of Cooper Webster. So it's all closing in a little bit rapidly at the moment, which is not what you need. Almost bumping there between the two teammates. This is Brenton O'Brien needs to get into this soon, because this is going to get nasty very quickly, and 2 ERT cars tangling. It would not be the first time we've seen it, but Kyle Stokes might be into the back of Cooper Webster. So late on the brakes as we're on board at the moment. Now on board with Cooper Webster, looking at the back of Ian Ford, who's just struggling for grip down the hill, out of turn number 1, now plummeting into turn number 3, now into the hard braking zone for turn number 4. So the car just constantly changing directions around this gorgeous elevating Donington Grand Prix circuit. But for Cooper Webster and the ERT cars, all getting a little bit messy, and they're just costing themselves positions, because Kyle Stokes is looking racy behind.
Yeah, well, you know, you've got the old wise shoulders of Ian Ford sitting in that number 4 car, and you've got the young blood of Cooper Webster, who's not just young to the team, but also a very young man himself. And, you know, he He wants to make a mark, and he probably wants to get in and get involved and show that he's someone that can do something. And Ian Ford is obviously a very well-known figure within the iRacing V8 Supercars community, doing extremely well, taking away several endurance championships in V8 Scops. So he's definitely someone that you can test yourself against. And when you're in the same team and maybe running the same setup, you want to be pushing those guys. And as you said, wouldn't be the first time two our TKs have come together. I think you and I can say from good experience, Bo. But those guys will fight extremely hard, and I'm sure that Ian Ford wants to prove as well that, you know, he's top dog in the supercar, with maybe the exception of Ethan Grigalt right now, because these guys are 17 seconds behind him. And we haven't spoken about him in a little while, but he now has a 7.5 second lead to Sam Blacklock, and then it's 14 seconds from Ethan Grigalt to Ross Rizzo as well. So Ethan doing a very commanding job tonight.
He has absolutely dominated this race from the start, and he is still, despite the margin, the quickest car on track, and by some margin, the only car that I'm seeing on the leaderboards in the 28 range, and it was a 28.7. So for Ethan Grigalt, just doing everything he needs to keep this race under his belt, doing a fantastic job. And it's no surprise that, you know, he is one of the best drivers in V8 Scops. He is a driver that can take it to Rogers, to Phil Sell, to all the top guys in the sport. And that's why he is a race winner this season. He is a fantastic driver and proving it once again, as Corey Preston now trying to find himself in a bit of a battle at the moment, getting past the slow-moving Justin Rougier, whose Aussie racing car, well, it's an Aussie racing car, but perhaps not the one he's used to, looking a little bit worse for wear. But Corey Preston is still putting on a lot of pressure into the back of Harley Haber, and there's always those drivers who have a different racing style. There's always the drivers willing to get a bit more aggressive against the other driver, you know, put a body panel on the others, or just try and move the other driver out of the way. We're about to see a battle between two of those drivers against one another, because Harley Haber has not had the best run out of the chicane, and Corey Preston always willing to go for a slightly aggressive move. So two very aggressive drivers going head to head on the exit. Who gets the better power out of the final corner, out of the penultimate corner, sorry, heading now into the final corner. We'll see if anything happens there as Corey gets closer and closer and closer behind the back of the Redback racing car, who misses the middle of the corner just a little bit. So a drag race once again, changing position from the left to the right for Harley Haber, dancing around, jostling for position. But Corey Preston looks like he has pretty good straight line speed, and it looks like he has P number 12 as well.
Yeah, it looks like Corey's got a fair bit of speed in that car in general. He was as low as second last earlier in this race, now back up into position number 13. So a very nice job there by Corey. And I think Harley Haber probably knew that. And if there are going to be two guys who are going to have fireworks on the grid, it's going to be those guys. I think possibly Harley might have taken that into consideration and just let that one slide for another time when it's a little bit more important. But we are now looking back up at Cooper Webster, because he is once again hounding teammate Ian Ford, almost rubbing bumpers as they came out into the braking zone, left a little bit of room either side. But Cooper Webster getting fantastic traction off the exit of that corner, going for a wider turn in, and some nice traction as he came out of there. Gonna try and do it once again on his teammate Ian Ford, keeping it nice and easy as they come off the exit there. And that looks like it's going to be job done for Cooper Webster. Ian Ford just tucks in behind, gives him the preferred line into the first corner. And now Cooper Webster can start making his way back up towards Brett Loxton, who's been making small inroads into Ross Rizzo, but definitely not what they need right now to get that final spot on the podium. Yeah,
of course, because of course Rizzo currently finds himself about 1.4 seconds in front, and Loxton only closing by about a 10th a lap, as Cooper Webster on our timing screens once again just changing around. So our timing screens playing a bit of tricks on us at the moment, which is always great to see. But one thing that isn't a trick on screen is the Velocity Sim Racing car of Andrew Welter, who's putting on a lot of pressure on his fellow teammate Matt Morris once again. So round number 5 at Donington is clearly a teammate bonanza, because there is definitely friendly fire happening quite a lot as the driver Matt Morris makes his way through that very fast right-hander. And it's an interesting little livery, I have to say. So maybe they're not teammates, maybe it's just a sponsorship deal for Matt Morris with Velocity Magazine, who of course also sponsor the team of Andrew Welter. So two very different looking cars, but very much sharing the same sponsor at the bare minimum as they make their way into this fast right-hander. And Matt Morris right out to the grass on braking. But you do have to be careful, because grass, if you brake on it, Zach, well, you're not going to have a fun time.
No, especially in a V8 supercar. In a GT3 car, you've got plenty of ABS. It's still definitely not ideal, but it's in some way recoverable in these V8 supercars, especially if you get a rear on the grass. I mean, you may as well just kiss the whole thing goodbye, because you're pretty much guaranteed to make it to the wall and give that a bit of a g'day. So very risky running these cars out on the grass, but some guys choosing to do it nonetheless. And Ian Ford, now that he's behind his teammate Cooper Webster, does appear to be struggling a little more, just trying to keep up with that Speed Cafe liveried machine of Cooper Webster just up ahead of him. And it's pretty evident by the attitude in that car that he's just not looking as nice in the rear. Maybe just using up a little bit of that tire as he was trying to defend from his teammate, and also trying to make a move or have a bit of a battle with Brett Loxton before as well. And Cooper Webster, oh, you can see what I mean. The lack of traction on the rear for Ian Ford is immense. That was a huge moment for Ian as he came out of the sweeping right-hander there. And you always want to get on the traction as soon as you can as you're coming through there. But for Ian Ford, it was a little too much too early, and that's not going to help him for the rest of the race. Getting the heat into those tires is not going to help you save the tire. And it's not going to help you into your next traction zone either. So it's just going to have to calm it down a little bit. But I've just noticed up ahead of them, little flashes of white smoke coming from the front tires of Ross Rizzo. And Brett Loxton is starting to reel him in bit by bit. Last time around, it was 0.6 of a second. Sorry, it was 0.4 of a second for Brett Loxton. There's only a few laps to go. There's only a 2-second difference between those two cars. If he can really make a push now, Brett Loxton, he might be able to make something work and get onto that final podium position. Yeah, absolutely. And I am noticing another thing which could spice this race up just another degree. Second place is Sam Blacklock. His last lap around was a 1:31, very slow. And he is fuel saving. I can tell you that for a fact. Down the hill, he was right off the throttle, just trying to save fuel a bit. So he does have a margin back to Ross Rizzo at the moment, but he is just losing a little bit of time. So if he can recover it in the next few laps, he might be safe. But we are also noticing that out of nowhere, we've lost Harley Haber from this field. So we'll try and find a replay for you now. But on this last lap, he has indeed retired from the race. And looking at it now through the chicane, he's just disappeared. He didn't make a mistake. He made the apex, unless that was a disqualification. Yeah, I think it was a disqualification. My JRT showing that he has a higher amount of incidents compared to some other competitors who are circulating the track at the moment. And that's very unfortunate, because if I'm not mistaken, did Harley have the same thing happen to him last week? I believe he did. So that's very unfortunate for Harley Haber. 2 races in a row where he's going to have to watch the checkered flag fall from the pit lane. And he's actually not even going to watch it fall. He's already left the service. So very frustrating there for Harley Haber. And Brett Loxton, if he doesn't get this 3rd position, I think he's going to be very frustrated, because he's doing everything that he can at the moment to get on to the back of Ross Rizzo. We are on board now with Brett Loxton as they come through the middle section of this track. A little bit of opposite lock coming out of the right-hander there. Now the long sweeping right-hander. Got to carry momentum, get on the power nice and smoothly. Brett Loxton using the gears and using a little bit of opposite lock to try and keep the traction straight and true. Is very difficult though when you're trying to turn so much and get the power down as well. Very nice entry and a very nice exit through the chicane. A little bit of a wiggle there for Brett Loxton, but this is where he's been very strong comparatively to Ross Rizzo. The braking zone into their hairpin, and look at the amount that he has made up on Ross just in that one corner. He's made up about 3 or 4 car lengths, ladies and gentlemen, and into the final corner here. Once again, you can see just how confident he is on the brakes. He is dancing with the steering wheel to make it all work, but it is starting to work for him. And now Ross Rizzo, the gap over the line, 0.7 of a second. So he can make it work here, but he's going to have to do everything in his little bag of tricks there to make it work on this final lap. Yeah, absolutely. So he's got to try and find some way around the circuit just to make a bit more time on the back
of the Trick Sim Sports car to make a move into that penultimate corner, because we saw once again visually just how good Brett Loxton is. We're now on board. So you can see that the trick car just in front, clipping the grass a little bit, just getting a little bit unsettled, not as unsettled as Brett Loxton does, though, has to take a slightly tighter line in response. Now on the roof cam, looking forward once again, so very nice onboard shots at the moment, but the only onboard shot he needs to know is his cockpit view getting closer and closer to the back of Ross Rizzo's rear bumper, but it's just not happening at the moment. He's not able to make the ground that he would need, so it's just not happening for Brett Loxton. The podium is in sight as he makes his way into the final chicane. He has to get a good run here, but so does Ross Rizzo, and it looks like it's fairly even Stevens, but it's not even Stevens for Ethan Grigg Galt out of the final corner, and this race win never looked in doubt. From pole position, every lap lead with the fastest lap to boot, it is a grand slam for Ethan Grigg Galt, who will win this race ahead of Sam Blacklock, who did lose a bit of time in the end to Ross Rizzo behind, just losing a bit of time. But the fact is that Ross Rizzo does indeed make his way home in third place as well. A great drive to hold off Brett Loxton on a very different strategy. Cooper Webster will win the fight between himself and the ERT cars, but only because Ian Ford has had an issue on the final lap. So what has happened to Ian Ford? He lost the spot to Kyle Stokes. So what has happened to Ian Ford? And it was a huge moment once again out of the big right-hander. And that was once again just, you said it when it happened the first time, Zach, that when you overheat these tires once, it's so easy to repeat it.
Yeah, and kudos to Ian for managing to actually keep that on the track and keep it all together, because he was on a good, I don't know, 60, 70 degree angle there compared to the track. So he managed to get on the brakes, stop the slide, and pull it back. And that is beautiful car control. Although he did lose a spot, it's definitely not as bad as it could have been for Ian Ford. But you're absolutely right. Heating up those tires towards the end of the race, it's just going to bite you. And it bit big time there for Ian Ford. Good to see that he could keep it on the track and come home position number 7.
Yep, absolutely. And we will get your results up on screen at the moment, as it is Ethan Grigg Galt who will win the race ahead of Sam Blacklock and Ross Rizzo, who make up your podium for tonight's round number 5. Brett Loxton comes home in position number 4 with Cooper Webster in position number 5. Kyle Stokes in 6th with Ian Ford sliding his way into P number 7. Brett Cananzi into P number 8 with Jay McKnight and Shane Van Gisbergen in your top 10. And I want to make a quick correction. It's not Velocity Sim Racing, it is Valkyrie Sim Racing.
Excellent. Glad to hear it. Adam Highland comes home in the Mean Machine at P number 11. Corey Preston did a good job after having some earlier troubles and making his way from second last back up into 12th. Nicely done there, Corey. Chris Coxhead, missing a boot for the whole race, ended up in 13th, and Matt Morris finished in 14th position. Andrew Welter finished in 15th position. Dylan Golston in 16th. Greg Sharp, a quiet race, in 17th position. Andrew Zackerson had a few battles and made his way up to 18th position, and David Miller came home in 19th. Harley Haber, unfortunately disqualified due to too many incidents this evening. Thomas Hins, after parking it early, decided to come out for a few more laps, but ultimately ended up 5 laps off the pace. And Justin Ruggier and Riley Blythe both succumbing to damage from a very major incident earlier in the race.
Yep, so there we go. 23 cars took to this race, 28 laps of Donington, and in the end, it was a pretty vicious race with only a handful of cars walking away without a scratch at all. But it's not the only competitive series that we do have here on the iRacing Esports Network this week, because on Wednesday night, the Porsche Super Cup Australasia will take place at Okayama, which is a fantastic circuit, and the Porsches should go fantastic around there, as they always do. On Friday, we had the LeBlanc Australian Online Supercar Series, which is taking place from the Nürburgring. So the V8 Supercars go onto a slightly different circuit than we would perhaps see, but it's going to be very interesting to see how those guys in the Australian Online Supercar Championship get on once again. And then, Zach, on the weekend, we have the Bathurst 500 on the Saturday, and then also on the Sunday, we have the Bathurst 1000 as well for the major series, which should be fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good to see a lot of different people who are, driving all sorts of different cars week to week. And the Bathurst 1000 is easily one of the most challenging events that you will have to come across. So it'll be very interesting to see who has the fortitude to make it to the end. And I'm sure that there'll be a lot of drama throughout that race as well. But definitely looking forward to watching that.
Yeah, it should be a fantastic show, as it always is. And then after that, of course, it is round number 6 of the Monday Night Official Series Championship, the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit for us as well. And Zach, well, we can't say too much at the moment, but it could be a slightly different look for us when it comes to next Monday. So if you are not if you haven't liked the Facebook page for V8 Online, if you're not following us on Twitter or any of the other social medias, even the Discord, make sure you do, because we have some pretty cool changes coming here at V8 Online, which should be very, very cool for the future. But of course, Zach, we're going to wrap it up there, because this has been round number 5 of the Monday Night V8 Supercar Series, broadcasted by V8 Online live on the iRacing Esports Network. And we will see you next time.
The following is a presentation of the iRacing Esports Network.
The most realistic online racing sim ever made. This is iRacing. Detailed laser scan tracks, fully dynamic real world cars, and over 50 series to choose from. 6 online world championships offering over $100,000 in annual prizes. This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.